tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Bhutang dhammang sanghang namasami. So it's April 1st, 2022, and back to the quote-unquote normal part of our year outside of the winter retreat. But we just keep practicing. The precepts are the standard of the practice. Everything other than the precepts, different determinations, adhitanas we make for ourselves, that's something we have extra to the precepts, but we take as our standard the precepts. So as long as we're within the framework of the precepts, we'll generally be okay. You know, if we slip up or maybe mess up somehow, but it's still within the framework of the precepts, then it's generally okay. Yeah. It's easy to get hard on ourselves, bash ourselves over the head. That's common, especially with Westerners. Not as much with Thais, but they do it as well. Actually, everybody is capable of doing this, of punishing themselves. Actually, there's not so much difference between Thais and Farangs. We say Farang, Westerner, or non-Thai. There's not so much difference, actually, because people are just people wherever we are in the world. Basically the same nature. So wherever Buddhism goes in the world, people are generally the same. There's this grouping of suttas in the Anguttara Nikaya where people are asking the Buddha, like, how long is the sasana going to last for? What's going to cause it to degenerate? There's a few different suttas where he talks about what causes the Buddhism to end eventually, or the true Dhamma, the teaching of the true Dhamma. One is he talks about the arising of a counterfeit Dhamma, so it's not really clear exactly what that is, but then in another place he says, well, it's not because of any external situation that the true Dhamma comes to an end, but it's because of individuals. It's because of individuals who misunderstand and do things that are harmful. And then that's the way the true Dhamma ends. There's another interesting sutta where the Buddha talks about bhikkhus who can either help or harm the Buddhasasana, and there's this, it's quite interesting. He talks about they have these different qualities, like if someone is a good speaker and speaks eloquently, speaks at the proper time, knows the Dhamma, speaks the Dhamma, and has the precepts, Patimokkha Sila, there's various other qualities. They can be of great benefit. And then if one, say, isn't able to speak on the Dhamma, or they maybe aren't keeping the precepts so well, or they haven't developed themselves in various ways very much, then they might not help the Dhamma Vinaya to flourish or to spread. But then there's a third type of person where they can speak eloquently, they know the Dhamma, they've practiced, and then they are able to keep the precepts and get others to keep the precepts, but they develop a view which is just slightly off. And they develop a wayward view which is just slightly off, and thus they do great harm to the Buddhasasana. It's quite interesting to read suttas like that, so that it really behooves us to be careful with the kind of views that we do develop in relationship to the practice, and to really bring it back to that simple Four Noble Truths and suffering and the ending of suffering, rather than overcomplicating it, overthinking it. It's very important. Also, any view which, say, extols oneself and denigrates others, that's also something to be careful of. Also, any view that wanders from not sure, which is Luang Chah's translation of impermanence or anicca, not sure. Any view that wanders from that is to be wary of. Try to find some idea, say, a worldly view that we have, and if we think, well, that's not sure. If we think that's not sure, that's something to be careful of, to be wary of, because that's not Dhamma. So we want the Dhamma where all conditions, physical and mental, all conditions are not sure. Now, I'm not really going to go on for too long. I've got a fair amount of homework tonight, actually. You might think that monks don't have homework, but actually they do, especially abbots. There's a board meeting tomorrow, and various other documents and essays that I need to read tonight in order to complete my homework. And also, just out of retreat, then we start picking things up again. Quite a number of things that we were able to set down during the retreat. But this is good. This is what's needed to keep this place going. So if we just blindly follow an ideal, well, why do we do things like this? Why don't we just sit and watch our breath? I mean, doesn't make any sense. We do all this work and looking after the facilities, and why don't we shouldn't have to pay attention to these things. We shouldn't have to go to board meetings. By the way, I've yet to be uninspired by one of our Sanghapala Foundation board meetings. I actually really enjoy those meetings, and it's good to see everybody reconnect, and I always appreciate people's input and the angle people bring to things. It's quite a wonderful group. These things are needed to keep the place going, or else it'll fall apart pretty quick. Especially in the West, where there tends to be more laws than in a place like Thailand. Like in Thailand, you can just build a kuti. You don't have to ask anybody. Here, it's like you can wait a year or longer just to get the permit, and they charge an arm and a leg for it. So it's here. It's like got to develop those qualities of patience and endurance. But also, we take refuge in not sure, the Dhamma of not sure. Oh, we really want to remodel Santi Vihara and make it suitable, but it's going to take forever, though, to get the permit. Well, not sure. So we respond to that with not sure. We don't know. We don't know. Oh, it's going to come fast. The Barmi of Luang Por Sumedho is going to come and make it happen. Not sure. Not sure. We say these things, but there's that false sense of certainty. And so we say, well, not sure, it's uncertain. It's kind of similar to the reading in Bloom, doing these readings from that Ajahn Sona book, Bloom, and him saying, well, it's all falling apart. So don't worry about it. We're worried that it's all going to fall apart. It is all falling apart, so don't worry about it. It is all going to fall apart, whether you worry about it or not. So it is not sure whether we feel certain or not. Or we might feel very sure about something, It doesn't make it not sure. So we don't really need to tie ourselves up in knots looking for certainty. It's just going to be uncertain. Even if we think we've found certainty, we can't think our way to an end of doubt. So it's inconstant. It's not sure. Abhayagiri is the best. I'm definitely going to progress in my practice if I'm here. Not sure. I'm going to go somewhere else. It's definitely going to be better than this group of guys. Not sure. So we keep coming back to not sure. Oh, I could never be a monk for the rest of my life. Well, not sure. Or there's another practice that Luang Por did, which is we call so practice, where everything you think during your meditation, you respond by saying, so? I'm terrible, I'm a hopeless case. So? I can't believe it, this meditation isn't going anywhere. So? Oh, this is so great, finally a good meditation. So? Oh, you did it again, you're stupid. So? I'm driving myself crazy. So? This person said that or this to me. So? So what? Doesn't matter. So it can do, that's also doesn't matter practice. Mai Ben Rai. We find these skillful means, the word for skillful mean in Pali is upaya. In Thai they say upai. So that's skillful means. We look for a way to develop some way to calm ourselves down. Yeah. Some way to come back to a sense of normalcy. So a lot of the Kruba Ajahns would praise just normal practice. That's another type of practice that we want to do. Normal practice. It's very hard to be normal. Just to eat normally. Sleep normally. We always want to be doing some sort of spiritual athleticism. I've got to be more austere, more ascetic. Eat less than the person next to me. And then confess that I've been eating too much to show how lacking in defilement I am somehow, or whatever, I don't know. We get all sorts of crazy ideas. And just to eat normally. There was this group of novices at Walpananachat that I helped look after one year. It's the first year they had, it's called the Samanera Summer. They have these novices ordained for a month, and they do one meal a day there. But then for the novices, because a lot of them are quite young, they were aged anywhere from 10 to 16 or so, 16, 17. And they were allowed a milky drink in the morning after alms round. And they were trying to outdo each other with their austerities. And so you'd have the most senior novice, and he'd get a full cup of Ovaltine, of milky Ovaltine drink. And then the next novice wanted to outdo him, so he asked for less. He'd have less in his cup. So you could see that he was actually taking less. He was being more austere than the novice next to him. By the last novice, he just had a little tiny bit in the bottom of his cup of this Ovaltine. It just went down like that across the line. They were each trying to be more austere than the previous one. So it can take a long time to sort of normalize and, not bash ourselves over the head for the slightest thing, or just, think that we're really awful somehow because we had 3 bites too much during the meal. Or, I don't know, we can just be, sometimes we're very creative in the way we torment ourselves. It's I'm actually sometimes I don't know whether to be impressed or upset, because sometimes it's impressive how creative we can be with the ways we torment ourselves. Impressively tied up in knots. I remember this one story my mom tells me of when I was a really little kid, and I had this blanket that I liked, and I got all tied up in knots one morning. I couldn't get out. I was kind of tying this blanket around myself, and I got stuck. My mom had to come untie it for me. I was stuck in my blanket. It's kind of a good image. I think I was 4. I got, it's kind of like, these blankets they're comfortable, so it's kind of like trying to get more and more secure and comfortable in this blanket, and then you kind of tie it around your arm and tie it around your head. Well, you're all tied up in knots and stuck eventually. So it's not really about building up a checklist of different practices. I've been there. It's not really about getting a certain checklist or ticking the boxes okay, I did this and this and this today. That's real suffering. The Dhamma, it's more about being fluid, having a mind like water, being able to flow into any situation as it arises, and also being able to flow away from situations if we have some sort of difficulty that arises, being able to flow away from that or drop that, being able to drop it, not allowing it to stick. Or if we have some sort of pleasant experience, being able to flow away from that and appreciate it for what it was, but not to stick to it. So that's the clinging. What it comes back to is nothing is worth clinging to, nothing is worth sticking to. The clinging can become less when we make our mind like water. There's 3 types of mind: the mind like stone, the mind like dirt, and the mind like water. The Buddha is saying the mind like stone is when something happens. It's say we get criticized or something. It's if our mind is like stone, it's like making a mark on a stone. It lasts for a very long time. It doesn't go away. And it's just there, that mark is just there. Mind like dirt is when, that's the middle way, that's the medium level. The mind like dirt is when something happens, praise or criticism or whatever, it's drawing a line in the dirt. It's there for a while. Eventually the wind or the rain gets rid of it, and it disappears over time. Mind like water, it's you're tracing your finger in the water and it just disappears as it's being traced. And that's the mind of non-clinging. The mind of non-clinging is the mind like water. It's not easy to get there because the clinging has been there for so long. We've invested in these things for so long. It's hard to let go. So it's okay. Telling ourselves it's okay if we can't let go yet, if we don't have a mind like water yet. But if we have a mind like stone, at least we can try to make it more like a mind like dirt, trying to work from where we're at. Another kind of wonderful Ajahn Chah anecdote that I really appreciate is that, and that's one of the reasons I was reading Venerable Father for a while, is just to show how human Luang Por Chah was, that he wasn't some sort of Superman, although he was in various ways. He was very tough and an ardent practitioner, but at the same time very human, and actually had foibles and would make mistakes sometimes. He wasn't always doing the perfect thing or the right thing, but he was doing very well. This anecdote of Luang Por Sumedho, and Ajahn Chah said he would tell the other monks, the junior monks, well, if you find fault with me, you should tell me. It goes both ways. It's not just the Ajahn telling the junior people their faults, it's also the junior people can tell the Ajahn his faults if they see something that's mutually beneficial. And of course, as a Thai monk, you would never approach Luangpo Cha, even if you saw something. Of course, you would never do that. And but Ajahn Sumedho, he being a Farang, then he actually found some sort of genuine fault with Luangpo Cha. I don't know what it was, but he approached Luangpo Cha about it and said, I genuinely found some faults with you. And Luangpo Cha, okay, and listened, and they talked about it, and Luangpo Cha's response was, it's good that I'm not perfect, because if you thought I was perfect, you'd look for the Buddha outside of yourself. And I think that's quite a wonderful teaching, because, and it's also kind of like that Ajahn Mahabua teaching, where the Dhamma isn't something you look at, like he can't take it out of his heart and say, look how amazing it is, look how wonderful it is. And you can't know somebody's level of Dhamma just from looking at them or being with them for a short period of time. It's very, very difficult to know. Even in the suttas, the Buddha's saying, like, you can't know somebody's sila, samadhi, panya, you can't know somebody's virtuous or unvirtuous qualities unless you live with them for a long time. And even after living with them for a long time, it's only if you yourself have very strong discernment can you really know. And so it's hard to know who has what level of Dhamma, what level of Sila. We don't really talk about it so much. We all just get on with things. We get on with the practice. And it's hard to know because you have to see completely beyond the personality. But it's good to know that. At least it's good to know that much. That you can't judge somebody's virtue by looking at their personality. It's like the story Luangpo Pasano told of George Sharf paying respects to Ajahn Mahabua, and Ajahn Mahabua being very coarse and rough with him, rude to him. But that's just his personality. And when confronted about it, Ajahn Mahabua laughed actually and was grateful and said, "Yeah, sorry, that's my personality." I believe he even apologized for it. But he wasn't internally angry, but he had the coarse personality. I mean, this is somebody who, according to a fortune teller, when he was a child, he was either, if he chose the path of the layman, he was going to be the greatest criminal in the land and would die fighting the authorities. But if he ordained, he'd finish his practice. So someone who, and his father, Ajahn Mahabua's father, was very, very ferocious, apparently. So took after his father. So to really know somebody, you have to see completely beyond the personality. It happens more often than not. It's like the perfect monk. It's the one who ends up falling apart. It's like what? He was the perfect monk. It's like oh yeah, that one's definitely got it. Look how straight they sit when they meditate. They can sit for hours, and almost never the case. So we're used to judging by externals. Or dear friend and monk friend in Thailand who has somewhat of a coarse personality, Ajahn Ñāṇiko, he had an insight into the way us as Westerners judge things. Usually we're quick to judge a book by its cover. And he said, oh yeah, if you're a monk in the West, if you want to get treated like a 20-vasa monk, just act like a 20-vasa monk. You'll get treated like a 20-vasa monk. If you don't tell somebody your vasas and you act like you're the elder, you'll get treated like the elder. But usually the Thais would see through that. Like, what is that, There's a newly ordained monk, putting himself forward and teaching all the lay people. They're like, oh, no, you got to stop doing that. But here, we'll have faith in that pretty quick. So we tend to judge a book by its cover. So we have to be very, very careful. Mind like water, we take things as they come, not sure. Oh, he's the perfect monk. Not sure. Oh yeah, that guy. Like for myself, when I was in Anagarika, found out later the Thais had running tabs on how fast I was going to leave. Not sure. I stayed. They only told me that after I was 5 vasas. Not if I was going to leave or not. The bet was how fast I was going to leave. Is it going to be 6 months, 8 months? It was really funny, actually, talking to Tina the other day. I just found out something about when I was one vasa, I was Lumpur Liam Zubatak, going on that trip to Canada. And because I didn't understand Thai that time, he made a funny comment about me that she had understood, and I only just heard it the other day, was when I think we were staying at Ladawan's house in Washington, and we got offered allowables in the afternoon, and I just started, because I was upataking Lumpur Liam, and I wasn't eating very much. I was afraid I would finish after him, so I'd finish way too early, and then so I could get his bowl before he finished. And then they passed out the allowables, and then we were all together, and I just started eating the cheese really quickly. And Lumpur Liam made a comment, "Oh, when they're young, they eat like that." But I didn't understand it at the time. When they're young, they eat like that. So, not to get too ambitious, as the winter retreat is over. We get back into the period of the year where we're doing some more projects and doing some work and going to meetings perhaps. But not to get too ambitious. We can just mind like water, not sure, so practice. We can practice so practice if we want. And just to try to remain in a state of normality. Because if we're in the boundary of the precepts, we're good. Just to remember that. As long as we don't venture outside of the boundary of the precepts, it's all good. Once we venture outside of the precepts, then we have to take action and make sure that we venture back into that boundary fairly quickly. So we do have to put pressure on ourselves if we venture outside of the bounds of the precepts. But as long as we're within the bounds of the precepts, yeah, if we eat 3 too many bites of food or 30 too many bites of food, we're still within the bounds of the precepts. So I ate 30 too many bites of food. So I'm a terrible person. So the Ajahns are going to really punish me. So what? Or not sure, or maybe not. It's wisdom to start thinking like that. So we're not going to stay up. I mean, anybody who wants to stay up can tonight. There's a Wanpra. The vigil will be optional. I'm going to do my homework and then take a rest. But anybody who wants to stay up is welcome to. And if anybody stays up, they can make themselves get a midnight tea or whatever. And as we move on, this next week, there'll be no morning and evening pujas except for the next Saturday Wanpra cycle. I think it's a Saturday that is a Wanpra, actually, the next week. So until then, there'll be no morning and evening puja, but we're going to start with our work meetings at 7:30 a.m. We'll have breakfast at 7, work meeting at 7:30. We'll do that. We'll get into that normal routine meal at 11 rather than 10:45 now. Tea at 5:30. Get back into that routine of the Q&A with a senior monk. Tea time. And so that's just a few thoughts for this evening. I'll leave it there.